Ongoing anti-corruption protests in Iraq pose a risk of destabilizing the country yet again amid lingering threats by Iran and local terror groups. This, in turn, may jeopardize U.S. interests in the country. One America's Kristian Rouz explains.
The U.S. appears to be facing a new threat to its national security, brewing this time and yet again in Iraq. Over the past few weeks, Iraqi security forces killed more than 300 protesters with explicit approval from Iran's Ayatollah regime, as the demonstrators denounced corruption and a rising Iranian influence in their country. This latest round of instability may challenge U.S. interests in Iraq.
Our efforts to help displaced Iraqis help facilitate the safe and voluntary return of more than 4.3 million civilians since April of 2015. We want them all to return home.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says the U.S.-led coalition has defeated the Islamic State in Iraq and Syria, but security challenges remain. During its struggle against ISIS, Iraq deployed Iranian-backed Shia militias known as the Badia organization in its territory. Now this entity has a parliamentary faction in Baghdad, but more importantly, Iraq now has an Ayatollah of its own. And that's exactly what Iraqi protesters are fighting against, saying Iran is exporting its Islamic revolution, along with endemic corruption, into Iraq.
We are taking to the streets peacefully. As you can see, the police are shooting at us. We don't create problems, but the security forces hit me 3 times.
The U.S. maintains roughly 5,000 troops in Iraq, whose mission is to prevent a resurgence of ISIS. Meanwhile, Iran claims the Iraqi protesters, most of whom are Sunni Muslims, may be affiliated with ISIS and other terror groups. And on Thursday, the Ayatollah regime accused the US of inspiring the protests as part of an effort to limit Iranian presence in Iraq.
Americans intend to ride a wave and turn this public movement into a riot, slaughter, and division in Iraq.
Earlier this week, Secretary Pompeo called on the Iraqi government to engage in dialogue with protesters, start economic reforms, and tackle corruption. Yet Baghdad wouldn't listen, and its attempts to crack down on protests sparked calls of violence among demonstrators. In this light, the US faces a hard dilemma in Iraq, where ongoing violence could create a favorable environment for terror, while quelling the demonstrations would hand the country into the hands of Iran.
Today we're watching the space once occupied by this fraudulent caliphate like a hawk.
President Trump believes the US must eventually pull out its troops from the Middle East and let countries in the region solve their problems on their own. But it appears sectarian and ethnic divisions require deep political reforms in Iraq before the US could leave, without risking a new round of chaos in the region. Kristian Rouz, One America News.
Want to see more videos like this? Click on the link below and subscribe to One America News on YouTube. And call your cable provider and kindly demand that One America News is added to your lineup. Call and subscribe today.